All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're asking a question that honestly, all of us have probably asked ourselves at some point. Can you really change who you are? Is your personality just fixed? Or can you actually rewrite the script?
You know, there's this old saying, mountains and rivers are easier to change than a person's nature. And it kind of hits home, right? It's this idea we see everywhere, that our basic personality is just something we're born with. And that's that.
But is that actually true? I mean, really? Or has science found a totally different answer? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into. Okay, so first things first. Before we can even talk about changing your personality, we've got to be on the same page about what personality even is. Probably the best way to think about it is like your own personal operating system. You know, it's that consistent, unique mix of how you think, feel, and act. It's basically your default settings for how you see and react to everything around you. So where does this operating system come from? Well, it turns out there are two main architects who are constantly at work building and shaping who we are from day one. And you've definitely heard of them before. It's the classic debate, nature versus nurture. So nature, that's your genetic blueprint. It's the stuff you're born with, your basic temperament, how your brain's wired. But then there's nurture. That's everything else. Your family, your friends, your culture, all the big and small experiences that shape you along the way. And get this, decades of research, especially from studying twins, have landed on a pretty staggering number. About half, a full 50% of the differences we see in personality traits from person to person can be chalked up to genetics. That's huge. It means a massive chunk of who you are was kind of baked in from the very beginning. So if half of it is genetic, does that mean we're stuck? That the old saying was right all along? Well, this is where the story gets really interesting, because the answer from modern psychology is a loud, clear no. It turns out our personalities are far from static. In fact, psychologists have found this really cool pattern they call the maturity principle. It basically shows that most of us change, and we do it in pretty predictable ways, just as we get older and live our lives. Just think about it, right? As a teenager, you might be more impulsive, maybe a little more anxious. Then you hit young adulthood, and suddenly things like responsibility and being agreeable start to climb. And by midlife, a lot of us had our peak of emotional stability. We become more reliable, maybe a little kinder. It's this natural evolution that happens to pretty much all of us. But hey, it's not just about getting older. Major life events are absolute game changers for your personality. Starting a new career, getting married or having kids, overcoming a major illness, even moving to a completely new place, these things don't just happen to you. They force you to adapt. And in doing so, they actively reshape who you are. And here's the kicker. This change isn't just some vague idea. It's measurable, and it can happen surprisingly fast. Big studies have shown that with focused work, like in therapy or coaching programs, you can see real, significant personality shifts in as little as 24 weeks. And what changes the most? People tend to become more emotionally stable and more outgoing. Okay, so we've established it. Change is real, it's possible. So the big question is, how do you do it? Let's crack open the toolbox and look at a practical guide for intentional growth. You've heard this one before, fake it till you make it. And it might sound like a cheesy motivational poster, but it's actually rooted in solid psychology. See, when you consciously decide to act in a new way, even if it feels totally unnatural at first, you're literally forging new pathways in your brain. You're rehearsing a new version of yourself until one day it's not an act anymore. It's just you. So the path to making that happen usually follows 4 key steps. It all kicks off with self-awareness. You can't change what you don't even realize you're doing, right? Then comes the hard part, behavioral practice. That's where you actually start doing things differently, starting small and being consistent. Third, you've got to work on emotional management, learning to handle those old knee-jerk reactions so they don't derail your progress. And finally, and this one's huge, you have to seek feedback, because we all have blind spots, and sometimes you need someone else to point them. All right, now for a really important reality check. Because while change is totally possible, it's not magic. And honestly, the smartest way forward isn't always about fighting against your own nature. It's about learning to work with it. Here's a really powerful way to shift your mindset. Think of every personality trait as two sides of the same coin. No trait is just good or bad. For example, if you're cautious, that means you make careful decisions, which is great. But the flip side is you might be slow to act. If you're outspoken, you're direct and get things done, but you could also come off as blunt. It's all about the context. Once you get that, you can start using much smarter strategies. You can play to your strengths, put yourself in situations where your natural tendencies are a huge advantage. You can also compensate for your weaknesses. If you're disorganized, don't just try to magically become organized. Use tools like to-do lists to help you out. And finally, you can lean on others. Use your support system to help you in the areas where you know you struggle. So you see, the goal isn't some kind of total personality transplant. It's not about erasing the person you are today. It's really about self-awareness and strategic growth. It's about figuring out how to set the stage for your own unique personality to really, truly shine. So we started off asking if you're stuck with the personality you have. And the science is pretty clear, absolutely not. Change isn't just possible. It's part of being human. So the real question isn't if you can change. The real question is, how are you going to choose to grow?